The following is a special video presentation from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. You are watching RJ Debates 2020. Here is your host, Steve Sebelius.
Welcome to RJ Debates 2020. I'm Steve Sebelius. In this debate series, we're talking with candidates for judicial races up and down the ballot. Tonight, we'll be hearing for candidates from Family Court Department G. That's Attorney Benjamin Childs. He is challenging incumbent Judge Rhonda Forsberg. Thank you both for being here. We're going to start with 1 minute opening statements for the candidates. We're going to go in alphabetical order. Mr. Childs, you go first.
Thank you. I've been an attorney in Las Vegas for 30 years. I raised 7 kids, 4 of which I adopted. The system has many challenges, but it can be improved through very simple policies. One policy is simply to enforce the existing policies such as the one judge, one family policy. Another one is to assign deadlines and stick to them. Family court judges do not operate in a vacuum as commonly perceived. For instance, Judge Potter does probate proceedings. Probate, bankruptcy, real estate, and criminal issues often are intertwined with family court cases. I was on the grand jury for a year in 2018 to 2019. A volunteer, having dedicated over 100 hours last year. I was a foreclosure mediator for several years. I was the president of my kids' school board, Explore Knowledge Charter School, for 6 years. I've done multiple jury trials, arbitrations, family court trials, mediations, multiple appeals. Matter of fact,
all right, Mr. Chad, we're at time, so thank you for that. Judge Forsberg, your opening statement for one minute.
Thank you, Steve. My name is Rhonda Forsberg. I'm the current judge of Family Court Department G. In April 2019, I was honored to be selected as the judge for this department from a field of 11 attorneys that went through the grueling selection process with the Selection Commission. Upon taking the bench, it's been a great experience, but I understand as a judge that the litigants before me deserve an informed, a fair, and efficient resolution so they can move on with their lives. I understand that that's the case for them, that they need to start to heal. And litigants can't heal unless they have a resolution. So that's what I've set my goals to do once I took the bench in April when I was appointed. So since that time, and prior to that time, Steve, I actually served as a pro tem hearing master for both Discovery Court and for TPO domestic violence, where I served on that bench as well. I understand that most of the litigants before me were going to be self-represented. We have roughly 70% of the parties that are before me are self-represented. So in order to make sure that I was prepared for this position, I sought and obtained and was granted a position as court-appointed counsel representing litigants that in the juvenile dependency system that were trying to get their kids back that don't have.
All right, so sorry to interrupt you there, Judge, but we're at time there, and I'm sure our first question will lead a little bit more into what you were just saying. I'd like you both to discuss your experience pertaining specifically to family court. Judge, you were appointed just a little bit over a year ago. You had some experience prior to that, but discuss your experience not only on the bench, but before the bench that qualifies you for this job.
Thank you, Steve. Great question. As for my experience prior to being appointed, like I was just saying, I actually had served as a court-appointed counsel to be able to understand and help the litigants on that side of the bench. I've also handled all kinds of litigation. I've handled high-end divorces down to the ones, like I said, that actually needed help and needed to have appointed counsel. I've actually practiced almost primarily solely in family. Like I said, I was appointed previously to serve as a TPO hearing master and a discovery hearing master for the courts. So under those experiences, serving as a judge, it has helped me greatly. Plus the fact that I've had experience with the highest divorces to the lowest situations that are tragic. So I've handled guardianship, divorce, adoption, every kind of family case you can imagine I've handled. And then I've had the experience of being on the bench for over a year. So I think that uniquely qualifies me in this department.
Mr. Childs, I know from looking at your website that you practice in a wide variety of areas, primarily business law, litigation, bankruptcies, things of that nature. Tell us specifically about your experience with respect to family court and why you would be qualified to be a family court judge?
Sure. Well, I've been around so long, I remember before they even had family court. As a matter of fact, I remember when they had allowed smoking in the courtroom or in the hallway. So everybody would be in there, and the judge at one point would be sentencing somebody in a criminal case, and then he'd call the divorce case. Everybody was outside all stressed out smoking before their case was called. And they had hearing masters. And then they created family court. It's probably around 94, 95. And so I've been practicing that whole time. When I came here, well, my bond number is 3946, so there was 3,000 attorneys. There's probably 2,000 attorneys in Las Vegas, 1,000 attorneys in Reno. So it was a much smaller community, so everybody kind of did everything. It was just a smaller community. And so I've watched the whole family court system develop. I've done appeals. Matter of fact, I was going to mention, I just got an appeal decision last week on the Davidson, interpreting the Davidson decision, which is a policy where the family court decisions are interpreted to be judgments and need to be renewed in 6 years or else they're void. So I've done appeals and
all right, sir, I appreciate it. We're at time on that question. Let me move on to a sort of another subject. Now, domestic violence is a constant issue in family court. What training specifically do you have in dealing with domestic violence issues, domestic violence victims, that you could put into practice if you were a judge? Mr. Childs, you go first on this one.
Well, I was on the board of Southern Nevada Mediators, which focuses on mediation. And I would just say my experience representing clients, both as the victim and as the respondent, that's all I have to say. I have a lot of experience representing both sides. And it's not just in family court. You realize that there are TPOs issued in justice court, and then the criminal aspect of how these cases impact.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Judge Forsberg, what training specifically do you have, maybe pursuant to your experience on the bench or before, dealing with domestic violence?
Okay, I've had both. Thank you, Steve, for that question. I have actually experienced both ways because I did represent a lot of litigants on both sides, whether it was the adverse or the perpetrator. I've handled both of those, but also being appointed as a pro tem judge for domestic violence, I handled it all the time. In addition, as a current sitting judge, we also have to handle emergency TPOs, which I just had that duty last week, which is every night and the weekends to handle those as well. So I've handled so many cases I can't even begin to count. But that, in addition to my practice prior, I've handled all of that. And that was why I was appointed as a pro tem judge for domestic violence, because that's a serious issue. And it's a terrible problem for our courts right now.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
For our community, it's sad because COVID isn't making it any better. It's making it worse. The numbers last week I saw handling emergency TPOs were heartbreaking.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we will be right back with more from the candidates for Family Court Department G as RJ Debates 2020 continues.
All your listeners and followers, the best name of any podcast in the world is podcast.
Nobody's ever done it. Nobody's ever faked
Not that we
their
know
death.
of.
No.
When you work with Prince, you got to get used to the fact that he changes musicians like underwear. You know, like
Tom Brady. And Tom Brady, he's a quarterback in the Boston area.
I'm not sure who you're talking about.
Get ready for every Raiders game with us. Vegas Nation Game Day will give you everything you need to know about each week's matchup.
I'm excited.
Sundays at 9 a.m. starting in September on Your View. Vegas Nation Game Day coming this September.
Welcome back to RJ Debates 2020. We're talking with candidates for Family Court Department G. Our next question goes first to Judge Forsberg, and that is this. Litigants often need help to get access to justice. That's especially true in family court, where not everyone can afford to hire an attorney, and often they represent themselves. What can you do as a judge to ensure that all litigants have equal access to the justice system?
Great question, Steve. As a judge sitting there, like I said, almost 70% of the litigants are self-represented that are before me. So we have the Self-Help Center in Clark County that is great. It has great forums. There's also a training that happens once a month that is done by Self-Help that can help self-represented litigants know how to do it. So the most important thing I can do is give them information, point them to the website, also refer them to the Ask a Lawyer program. There's also that. There's a lot of help, and there's also pro bono help through the Legal Aid of Southern Nevada. So referring them is what I can do, and making sure they're being heard. That's the most important thing.
All right, thank you, Judge. Mr. Childs, you've been an attorney here for a long time. A lot of people have hired you. What about people who can't afford to hire somebody like yourself? As a judge, is there anything you can do to help them get access to justice?
I don't have anything to add to what Judge Forsberg said. I mean, that's what you do. You refer them to the Self Center is excellent. I mean, they volunteer, but of course, as a judge, you couldn't do that. Through Legal Aid and the Pro Bono Project and the Senior Law Project, and they have the Children's Advocacy Program, Children's Advocacy Project, to represent children in the juvenile system. And so all you can do is refer. And again, that the Self-Help Center is excellent. I don't have anything to add to that. I agree with the judge. That's what you should do.
Okay. Let's move on to another issue. The National Institute of Mental Health says that 1 in 5 adults at some point during a given year are going to have struggles with mental illness or mental health. In 2019, Nevada ranked last in access to mental health services. So what training or experience do you have in dealing with people facing mental health issues that would help you if you were elected to this position? Mr. Childs, you go first on this.
Training in mental health. I don't know. I know I deal with a lot of clients that have dealt with the Legal 2000 process. That's where when the police respond, they can take you to essentially incarcerate you for 48 hours for observation. So that's really all I have.
Okay, Your Honor, any specific training or experience in dealing with people facing mental health issues in the courtroom that would help you as a judge?
Actually, Steve, my undergraduate degree is in psychology, and that's been very helpful because I actually can recognize a lot of the mental illness that's coming before me from the training in my undergraduate program. So along with that, it also, what I can do to help them is also, I mean, that's another part of this question would be, how do you help them with that? So a lot of times I'll explore with the litigants about their own insurance plans that might help them, because my job is to help these families heal and move on. So helping them get the help they need with my training has been really helpful to me on the bench. And understanding I did insurance for 20 years, so I understand health insurance. So I can point them in the direction of health insurance for their mental health, and I have the undergraduate degree to back it up.
All right. Well, hopefully nothing I've said during this debate has triggered any of your psychological training in your undergraduate degree there. Let's move on to another question, a more pragmatic question. And Judge, you'll answer this one first. If you saw a party in your courtroom who was being inadequately represented by an unprepared attorney, what would you do? How would you handle that situation?
Well, Steve, first of all, I recognize that they're entitled to choose their own counsel. And if they're represented by counsel, I have to respect that. However, there's a lot of things you can do, perhaps pulling counsel behind in chambers and say, look, I'm concerned, and putting both sides, both attorneys on notice, because we all have a duty to report. If I see such bad representation, I also have a duty to report to the state bar about that attorney. And I've had to do that. It's just unfortunate. But at the same time, they are entitled to choose their own attorney. So the best I can do is point, if I have to report them, I report them, call them back in chambers perhaps and say, look, there's a problem here, and then proceed.
Mr. Childs, same question. You've been an attorney for a long time. If you were on the bench and you saw someone who was unprepared or ineffective representing somebody in your courtroom, what would you do?
Well, it's all relative. You know, family court has a separate ethical obligation than the state bar, where the state bar's obligation is to represent the client, and the family court ethical obligation is to promote the kids, the family court. So that's something you really have to keep in mind, because the problem is we're in an adversarial system. Your client hires you. They're the ones paying you. One question that comes up frequently is, well, if what you want, my client, isn't in the best interest of this family or the kids, you really have to have client control and just explain to the client the facts of life and perhaps withdraw. It happens all the time.
All right. Sounds good, candidates. Thank you very much. We're going to take another short break. We'll be back with more from candidates for Family Court, Department G, as RJ Debates 2020 continues.
With so much excitement building around the Raiders and their inaugural season in Las Vegas, the fans want to be heard. The launch of Vegas Nation Fan Zone is their answer. That's right, Raiders fans can sound off on all things Raiders, from players to coaches to even the new Allegiant Stadium. Vegas Nation Fan Zone is accessible 24/7 and allows fans to generate and upload their own posts for lively interaction. Simply go to fanzone.vegasnation.com to sign up today.
Welcome back to RJ Debates 2020. We're talking with candidates for Family Court, Department G. This next question will go to Mr. Childs, and that is this. Is there a case or a ruling or something else in your legal career that you look back on now and you say, if I had a do-over, I would do something differently in that case?
I'd say no. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one.
All right. Your Honor, is there anything, whether a ruling that you have made in the last year or something else that's happened during your legal career that you look back and say, I should have done that differently?
Steve, I think that's a hard question, except for this is the situation. I think you should always be growing. And I think I could always do something better. And I can try harder on each one. And I always strive to be prepared and always on the bench, and even when I was an attorney. So I think that we could always do something better. Can I pick a specific case? Probably not. But I think that everyone, whether you're on this side of the bench or that side of the bench, can always do better. And that's what we should be striving for. We should not sit back and think we've always done it perfect, because nobody's perfect. We do our best, and I'm trying to help families by doing my best. So I don't think there's something I can actually pinpoint, but clearly I think everyone can always do better.
All right. Judge, this next question is for you. Do you believe, or did you have any difficulty in moving from your role as a private attorney and an advocate for clients to a judge who's supposed to be objective and neutral, looking at the facts?
Steve, I don't think I've had much trouble with that, because I'd already sat as a pro tem judge, so that really helped me. If I were going to say before that point, sure, I have to be cognizant that my job is not to advocate for anybody. It's to apply the law fairly and efficiently to help these families move forward. So I think prior to taking the bench, it's a little bit of a transition, but I feel like I've done a good job at making that transition and recognizing that my job is not to advocate for either side. It's to provide fair and efficient resolutions for these families to heal.
Mr. Child, you've been an attorney for a long time. Do you think you would have any difficulty going from an advocate in the courtroom to a neutral arbiter?
I'm sure there would be some difficulty, but I got to tell you, the amount of time that I work being a judge would be like being retired. Because for one thing, you can't meet clients on Saturday, Sunday. You can't say, okay, we're going to continue this trial. We're going to start at 8 o'clock, because you got to have the bailiff, you need the clerk. So you're totally restricted on the time factor of when you can have court because of other people involved. But no, I think it would be a problem. I am very client oriented. And I acknowledge that would be definitely a transition for me.
All right. How about this, Mr. Child? Take this one first. If there was one thing, what is the one most important thing you would change about how family court currently operates if it was in your power to do so?
The timing. of making decisions timely. That's why I would propose having the tentative ruling before the hearing. It's very common in federal court where you'll issue a tentative ruling. So just pointing out, not necessarily the decision, but just pointing out what you're focused on, and then having deadlines of when to have decisions. As a matter of fact, I had a case today, and the client is in South Carolina. He's sick. 2018 case, no kids. It still hasn't been decided. I believe that a 1-year deadline is a reasonable time to make all decisions from a complaint, or if there's a motion like post-divorce, post-judgment, within 1 year of the motion, there should be a decision.
Interesting. Judge, what would you, now having experienced family court for a year, what do you think you would change, the one most important thing?
If it's only one, I'm really struggling with only having one, Steve, because one would be to have each litigant be able to have an attorney be able to appear for them. The access to justice is a problem. So I see that as part of the problem. Do I agree that there's a timing issue? I do agree, but at the same time, my current caseload is over 800 cases. So to say that he would be on vacation or have it easy and not have to work on the weekends is not true. So I clearly think that's what I would hope for, is that we had better access to justice for litigants. But timing, it would be great to get him through the process quicker.
Okay, sounds good. We're going to take one final break, and we'll be back with Family Court Department G as RJ Debates 2020 continues.
The Vegas Nation podcast is your source for all your Las Vegas Raiders news. Subscribe and get fast takes and smart coverage. Download the Vegas Nation app, check out vegasnation.com, and stay up to date with your Las Vegas Raiders.
Alexa, play my flash briefing.
Here's what's new in today's news.
Stay in the loop of the latest information in the Las Vegas Valley with the Las Vegas Review Journal Flash Briefing. Every day, we will provide you with everything you need to know in news, business, weather, entertainment, and sports. Go to the Alexa app and search LVRJ News Briefing. Then say, Alexa, play my flash briefing to hear 3 minutes of the most important information in Las Vegas.
Welcome back to RJ Debates 2020. We've come to the part of our debate where we'll hear closing statements from the candidates. We're going to go in reverse order than we did at the start. That means, Judge Forsberg, you go first.
Thank you, Steve. And I want to thank the Review Journal for hosting this event. Again, my name is Judge Rhonda Forsberg. I'm your current judge. And I believe in having informed, fair, and efficient resolutions to help families. I know it's a hard situation to be before a family court judge. And I strive every day to make sure that I can get you through the process as least scathed as possible, to try to let you heal. And that's what I intend to do for the next 6 years. If you will give me your vote in November, I'd appreciate it. And I appreciate all the time that we've been offered today for this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Ben Childs, your closing statement.
Thank you. I want to clarify. I'm not saying that I would be on vacation. I'm saying it would be like a vacation because of the amount of time that I work in the private sector. The three things I'm focused on are empathy, equality, and efficiency. Empathy, I've been through the court system, so I can relate to the litigants, and it's very stressful, emotionally, very important for the judge to be empathetic. Equality, I think everybody should be treated equally. The current system is joint custody, and I think it's very important to have fathers involved with the kids. I think that's a major problem in our society now. And then efficiency, as I talked about earlier, and the judge acknowledges it. And I want to say I do appreciate the judge saying that she had a background in psychology. I did note that. And it's not an adversarial thing with me and her. We all agree that the family court has an efficiency problem. And I believe, as coming from private practice, that I could speed things up and offer policies that would get things through the system.
All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. I appreciate both candidates taking the time to participate in tonight's debate. That is our debate. You can stay up to date on all the 2020 political news on our website. That's www.reviewjournal.com. Please join us again as our debate series continues. Until then, for the Las Vegas Review Journal, I'm Steve Sebelius.